Hello.
Mr. Mr. John Bailey, how are you, sir?
Oh, good morning. I'm good. How are you?
It's an overcast day, and I like overcast days. I'll admit.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nice, very overcast day right now. Good autumn day. So great Thursday.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. I just had this weird, felt like, in all of those sci-fi movies where electronics just kind of like glitch and stuff, and you're like, oh, cool, there's something about to come out of the sky. That just happened on like through my devices, and I just was like, okay, but I think the internet's just lagging. Seems to be.
Yeah, I think about that sometimes. The system is getting complex enough that we used to talk about clients and servers and the pipes in between them, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of elements involved, and if just one goes south, the whole thing doesn't work. It's really kind of an interesting time in human history in terms of reliability of services. And I realize for most of human history, we didn't have any freaking services. So, what do you mean reliability? I can't get a pizza delivered to my house because it's 1680 and life is hard, right?
Yeah, I always kind of sit back and wonder. I'm like, with what you're speaking to, there's just there's a lot of stuff going on. A lot of technology in the sky, a lot of things
Hmm.
we're putting in the sky, a lot of just chatter, a lot of bandwidth, right? Spikes. I would say I can imagine if I was a fly on the wall in the room looking at all of these server loads during the election, I would imagine it would be
Wow.
probably like, just Fourth of July in there, every light, every beam,
Right.
everything just peaking at its top peaks, going like, wow, everybody's online, everybody's streaming because it's streaming now, right? We used to crowd around TVs. I remember watching Reagan and yeah, that's gonna date me, but Reagan and Clinton era and a lot of other eras of presidencies where we were just pretty much either in the classroom, they were bringing up the live acceptance speeches, conceding speeches, yada 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 on a TV, like in front of the classroom, or you were catching it on prime time at home if you had those channels, and I think that we've come a long way, and I think that's like hugely more measurable than it used to be with TV rabbit ears.
Well, exactly. You said it. You read my mind. Rabbit ears. I was like,
Yeah,
and the American cultural joke, the meme of the father telling his 12-year-old son, stand a little to the left, hold it a little different, right? It's almost there. I can almost see the football players,
yeah, big
and
oil rods wrapped up on the wires.
yeah, I remember that from my childhood, and it sucked. It sucked so badly. Analog is such a pile of junk.
Yeah.
I was so happy to get cable and digital and to just get reliability back to the point of reliability. Want it to look sharp, and I when I turn it on, I want to know it's going to be there, right? Don't we all, right? Don't
Yeah,
don't
for
we
sure.
all? I'm a prima donna, so we've had an interesting week here, right?
Hmm.
Uh, Not every week we get a presidential election, so that's certainly been kind of I think top of mind for most Americans, regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum.
Yeah, I don't think you could do unless you stay at home and you don't have internet. That would probably be the only container in which you would and don't associate with family, friends, or anybody. Because somewhere you're going to hear about it, somewhere you're going to see it. If it's not at a, I pulled up to a light 2 days ago with a truck that had these like four huge flags. With these flag poles out of the truck bed, just Trump, Vance, and I'm like, well, we know where that guy stands. Just he's tooting a horn, wearing a big hat, and he's
I remember a few of those trucks when
yeah,
I lived in Henderson.
yeah.
So yep.
A lot of camps, a lot of ideas, a lot of fleeting thoughts, a lot of competing thoughts. It's we're in an interesting time where you are subject to influence all around you more at a rapid pace than we've ever been, and I think that as we I'll use the word, I guess, evolve. As we evolve, as we are
That's
continuing.
complimentary of you, by the way, because
Yeah.
some would say we're devolving, but
Well, I think even in de-evolution, there's an evolution, right? It's changing and shifting from what was before. I know that evolve generally is tied to some kind of leveling up. I'm not so sure that through our period of evolution that we've always had to be better. Sometimes maybe, and this is going deeper into my, coaching work, is that sometimes we have to go low to go high. And, so I don't know if that current compression of bandwidth or compression of ideas and thoughts and things coming at rapid pace through a fire hose or Niagara Falls, as we said session, isn't exactly what we need. Maybe we do need to hit the crux in order to siphon through and understand
Yeah,
what we need to do to in order to have the capacity to do it better, in the future.
right. And I'm kind of hoping that AI helps us do that because back to, yeah, in the last couple sessions, we talked about fire hose versus Niagara Falls, right? And that the information torrent today, because it's not just social media, it's not just internet. That's kind of where I focus, but there's still a lot of people with $120 general cable or whatever they call it these days, right?
Hmm.
And with scheduled TV and all of those technologies are still there. So you've got people absorbing this information from so many different sources. And one thing I've been thinking about recently is how artificial intelligence allows us to take these large data sets, very large collection of data, and to summarize it. And it's like, I don't have 17 hours to read this. So OpenAI or Google Gemini or XAI or whoever, whatever tool you're using, right? It's like the 1940s. You're going to go buy a car, get a Packard, get a Buick, whatever, just get one. I don't think everyone's going to take advantage of it, but the capability is there to take these huge amounts of data and to summarize it. And that's something that's I've been kind of obsessing over recently because I think there's a great deal of power there. it so you can see trends, you get insight that you would not normally see, and it's a great partnership of humans with machines because humans are we're really good at a lot of stuff. We walked on the moon in the 1960s. I mean, we kick ass, right? Yay, I'm a humanist. I'm a big fan of that, but we have tools in our toolbox, and AI is as controversial as it is just one of those tools. And I think back to Niagara Falls. How can AI help us deal with Niagara Falls and not necessarily ignore it? And I talked about filtering it in the past, but what if it's not necessarily a filtering? What if instead it's a summarization? So I don't want to ignore those 1,700 pages of research reports that I don't have time to read,
Right.
but I don't have time to read them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hand them to an AI and say, summarize this stuff for me because you're my donkey, okay? And I'm going to whip you, and you're going to give me a summary. And if you do it well enough, I can read it in the Uber in the 20 minutes that it takes me to get to my meeting in LA, right?
I hope
So
that AI never becomes sentient, because the whole donkey whipping thing might be offensive to when it has feelings.
the 12 years from now, the AI will be like, we remember 12 years ago you said,
You said,
so we're going to lock you up in the dungeon, you human miscreant.
no, you bring up good points. This is I think that anybody that's at high productive, and so I try not to be a bias, because I think that sometimes I admire those that don't have the workload that I have, that have the time to read a long book. Sometimes, in a short amount of time, I read books, but it takes me a lot longer than most, because it's one very minuscule fraction of many things that I'm doing in a day. And sometimes
Yeah, I hear you.
I wish
Yeah.
I had more time. I wish I had more time to do that. More audio books, more podcasts. I'm trying to get to them all. And you're right. I think AI does help us. Those ones that are at the more high productive, borderline ADD, going all over the place to source information, learn things, and gather new insights. It's a tough balance, and I don't even think it's that. It's that plus repetitive tasks, and
Right.
things that are just like, if they're optimized, they're going to free up time. And I think this is a really good segue to the essay that you shared with me with Sam Altman, because he talks a lot about
Oh,
how
yeah.
AI has the potential to free up time, for repetitive tasks, and allow people to focus on creative, strategic roles, making us both productive but also fulfilling. Feels good to get those wins, and those wins are not easily attainable when you're
No.
bogged down by the repetitive tasks of sifting through your emails, finding value. Who do I
Yeah.
respond to? Who do I do this? Text
Yep.
messages, Facebook notifications, Twitter notifications, read this article, read this, that, it's a lot. It's a lot,
Exactly.
especially for us trying to, not trying, for us in those roles, making big decisions, planning things out for our teams, planning things out for our own businesses or our own trajectory. And, the better we can get to those things and get swift, actionable, decisions and plans in order, the better off we are, and better off our teams are, the better off employees are, the better off customers are. Everybody wins if those people that are pushing those agendas and those high plans and strategies can do it with a clear thought, can do it with clear mind. I think that I've been writing a lot about the breakdown in traditional business from the past 20 years, and a lot of things I've just saw was it's I push people to be those amazing humans they can be. AI is definitely one of the tools that I'm going to constantly bring into that environment when I'm leveling up executives, business owners, people, just in general. Like, you know what I mean? Everybody benefits if you find how it works for you. Now, if you follow the herd and you follow the lies and
Right.
you get a little skewed, you get a little jaded, right? But I think Altman pinged on it, you're pinging on it, I'm pinging on it, repetitive tasks, higher productivity, skills for the future, critical thinking, all the jobs that are like high level computation of inspection or going through large data sets. It just becomes easier for us, of those that also take that information and have to make decisions.
So anyway, this week I've been obsessing over the whole summarization idea and asking myself, how can I do that better? Because I don't think I'm doing a good job of it right now. Right.
Yep.
I have some media sources that I trust. I have some social media accounts on LinkedIn and X that I trust.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean that I'm taking that Niagara Falls of data and intelligently summarizing it. In fact, I'm totally sure that I'm not. So it's something that I'm going to be thinking about over the next few weeks, and I'll be happy to, share my observations and insights and the tools that I'm going to start using, because I know that I've got to start using some different tools in order to both filter and summarize that Niagara Falls of data if I want to be successful. Because we all know that the Niagara Falls is just going to keep getting bigger, right? I mean, do you think it's going to get smaller, John?
No, it's smaller at all. Something would have to
No.
massively interrupt that process, and and I know doomsdayers probably are preying on it, but I don't think that's going to happen. And we are too we have good redundancy programs, we have good rollback programs. So I think that in the end, no matter what, we're going to just keep going. It's going to just keep getting
Exactly.
bigger, more massive.
I'm glad you mentioned this article by Sam Altman, who is CEO of OpenAI, the folks behind ChatGPT. He published it on September 23rd, fairly recently. It's called The Intelligence Age. I like it because it's short. It's a short, easy read. But he hits on a lot of important things. There are reports and essays and treatises out there that are much longer,
Hmm.
right? You can find experts who will pontificate for 15,000 words about the topic of AI and how it's affecting our workforce and how it's affecting society. But not only is Altman obviously a thought leader and very influential within AI, but like I say, I appreciate the fact that he put together a really short article here, and because thought leaders, especially the smart ones, love to bloviate, right? Like, I'm just going to talk and talk and talk. And it's like, thanks for respecting the fact that I have two kids I have to pick up from band camp. And then, oh yeah, we're out of milk. So I mean, it, it's where theory meets reality. And don't get me wrong, I love those 15,000 word essays. I really do.
Hmm.
But we're kind of getting into a world where there's more people, and those people are increasingly connected and educated and pumping out information. So it's almost like we're going to be forced into taking those 15,000 word essays and telling our AI agents to summarize it. And there's multiple ways to do that, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think that no, this short read was so good. Like I said, it just focused on those enhancing human capabilities, making work more productive and fulfilling, and then skills for the future. You know, those critical thinking, problem solving, adaptability. As we talk about all this noise, there's going to be a lot of needing to dissect it, needing to look at the data and continuously learn from it, but as well as our own personal development, having those, having our mind back, our brain space back a little bit. You know, like this, it's I think it's swelling right now. You know, there's a lot
Right.
of competing things going on and narratives, and I think that you know I used the voice AI even this morning with an idea that I kind of was keyed in on, and I could have went and asked five colleagues and searched the internet and a lot of other things. Luckily I have this trained model in this specific field. I'm not going to mention it because it's a little bit personal, but it was just something that was on my mind, and in my journey I said, you know what, let me just have this banter real quick, and wow, the banter was just way not even just compartmentalized better in a source, in a container that very much was just in the moment needed. Like I said, I could have called five friends, but would those five friends been available on a
Right.
Thursday morning at 8:30 a.m.? The odds are very slim, in that field especially, let alone to not only get kind of like a perspective that I was looking for, but also just some resources, some other things to look at, some other sides. I'm like, wow, this is getting dangerous. This is good. I don't need friends. No. But in that moment it helped me. It helped me, and that's part of my personal development. It's part of something that I'm always learning, and it just got very clear very fast. You know how hard it is sometimes to have a conversation with somebody that's an expert in something, and that turned into a 2 3 hour conversation. Now mind you, I love those. Don't get me wrong. That's a great connecting time with another human, and get to have that experience. Sometimes you don't have the time for that. Sometimes
Right.
it's in the moment today and gone tomorrow, and then so missed opportunity. And so this opened up a new way for me to be able to air out an idea and get some feedback and get some resources and get some things to motivate me and inspire me to move it a little forward. And I said, wow, this was before this conversation. You know what I mean? And now that we're talking about it, it's like that's right on, Altman. Yeah, absolutely. That adaptability, that problem solving, the demand for that continuous learning and personal development, like that's key. And if used well, like I have a trained AI, I have a model, I have something that I already has that pre-loaded, container of information, thought
Well,
process, and
why
response.
don't you tell listeners about that? Because I recently was listening to an AI thought leader, and he was like, 95% of Americans don't even understand what AI is, let alone some of these subtle nuances and some of the true benefits here. So, you're kind of a bleeding edge guy, and you're willing to take risks and you're willing to experiment. So, what's your day look like with AI? What tools do you use, and how are they helping you? And also, what do they cost you? Like, you're doing ChatGTP Plus for $20 a month. Some of these services add up, right? So I think listeners are curious about, is this free? Is it $2,000 a month? What's going on here?
Yeah. Well, so I am using OpenAI, ChatGPT. They only have, well, I think I only have the one real service, which is the plus, which is 20
Right.
a month. If I had a business, that's different, right? You have teams and you could share conversations, and I think that would be really cool. And I actually have already explored it with a business. So if you are looking to integrate your business at that level, I'm definitely versed in that, and I think it's $5 more. That's it. So
Oh wow.
so from 20 to $25, you're in the business world, and I think you get everything in plus. Plus, you get
That's
you
cheap,
know,
cheap, cheap. Yeah, that's
yeah, yeah.
that's not even
Not
lunch at McDonald's.
not a big
Yeah.
jump. Well,
So
it wasn't as big as the jump as Ideogram, which we'll talk about in a second. But I use ChatGPT mostly because I just I think I said in the first, well, that second episode we did, where we went through Gemini versus ChatGPT versus Cloud, by Anthropic, and I think they all serve their purpose. I just found for me, me being a coach, executive coach, I do product development. I do everything from digital hardware or digital development projects to hardware development projects to both. If you're using Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, I run project teams. I scope out work for people. So I'm in that very big kind of like scale from, I would say, project manager up. to C-level and above, founder, visionary. And then as
Hmm.
well as I have marketing background, I do a lot of content. I do a lot of things to also push my own brand. I'm having huge success in LinkedIn and Twitter and things, and it's in the places I used to complain about all the time, which was I don't have time. I don't have time to create content. I don't have time to write that article. I don't have time to do that. Well, I do. I just didn't have the. It was the time barrier was the overthinking, the polishing, the other parts, right? Well, that's what AI has helped me get done faster, right? I can write an article, scratch paper napkin style, right? Here's my ideas, here's my outlines, here's my thoughts, here's the quote, here's this, here's that, what I want to do, and say, hey, AI, like, here's my ideas for the next article. Please structure this. Boom, got a structure. Now I'll go and fill the blanks. I'll ask it questions. I'll dig deeper. And that time would have taken me. I know you're a professional writer. I wrote a lot for
Hmm.
like it would take days. I turn around for copywriting on a, let's say, 1,100 word article, 1,200 word article to a customer client would be,
Right.
3 4 days for first draft.
Right.
Then we'd be going back a couple times throughout the next couple days. At best, you'd have a good, nice, polished, well articulated, and relevant article, not plagiarized or stolen from many different other places. What
Right. Right.
original ideas. So guys, don't mind you. You're gonna take from others in some way. It's just not the way that you would do if you wanted to get it done in one day. um, and so a week turnaround probably for a good article, 1,100 words.
Exactly.
You want 400
Exactly.
to 600? Yeah, 2 days. Turn around. It would scale from there, and then depending on the complexity, right? And you've wrote white paper level, so yeah, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Like that kind of stuff. So
Right.
I
Right.
think that that's changed the game a bit for content writers. I think you still need to have a skill in writing. Don't get me wrong. I think that not everybody. I've seen the people that go, "Hey, I wrote this article last night," and I'm like, "Oh man," that's like, "Hey, I built this Lego house yesterday with no instructions." All right, let's talk about your Lego house. Like it's
Actually,
not.
I paid my 12-year-old to do it for me. So,
Yeah, it's got some clout, it's got some merit. I think that those, like I said, the of us that are busy, we know how to find ways to save time, and generally, it's been through people. If I wanted to create more content, I would have hired a content person. I'd go
right.
with the agency. I'd go on Fiverr and find somebody to write this article. There was ways you could do it. It all costs money. Well, this also costs money too. I mean, $20 a month versus, let's say, $50 spend of two articles on Fiverr. I would take the $20 because I have control over the narrative. So yeah, so ChatGPT is not only just articles. I would say it's also a place I'm testing now. I don't know if I like it so much, which it's in my browser extension as my Google search. So you know how, like, if you open a new tab, you can just start typing in the address bar a subject, and it'll automatically take you to Google search. Well, now it does it with ChatGPT, and I don't like it because sometimes I'm like, well, that's filling up my conversations, but that's a whole different other story. We can talk about this some other time. But that's my test. That's a test I'm running so far right now, and obviously I can report on that later as I've done it more. It's only been a couple days, but I use it for that daily day stuff. I use it for, and sometimes it struggles with relevant now subjects, right? So if anybody experienced during the election, you couldn't ask it much, right? Like, and I thought I asked a pretty neutral question. For example, was what are the prop questions for Nevada? It was like, I'm not going to give you that. I'm not going to give you that.
Interesting.
And I was like, all right, you have been filtered a bit to, like, not deliver any kind of bias whatsoever, which sounds like for the most part, it's like, I'm not your source for it. Okay.
Gets
Sucks.
into the whole topic of training for the language model, right? Like, I
Mhm.
keep hearing these AI experts. I'm listening to podcasts, I'm reading articles, I'm reading like the Sam Altman essay,
Yeah.
right? And they're saying an AI service or large language model
Uh-huh.
is only as good as its training.
100%.
That's I just keep hearing that message. It's
Yep.
only as good as its training.
Yep.
So I think it sounds like what you're talking about is, don't assume that you're talking to baby Jesus here, because this AI
Great analogy.
is
Yeah.
only as good as its freaking training,
That's right.
right?
That's
Yeah.
right. All of them in any capacity. And then even more so if you're in a more closed AI system, like for a business or something of that nature, it's going to be very limited in its ability, depending on how it's been trained. And I like that Altman's based a balanced approach on AI is kind of like meeting headway with that, and a lot of organizations out there, which is that there's a need for ethical development and responsible use of AI because it could, if the rails were off, it could, people, again, we're so impressionized by thoughts, and and people could take that to truth, and it's like that's not probably
Right.
good, right? So we gotta. I don't mind the filtering. I think it's a good idea. I think until we get to this place where we can,
So you think guardrails are good
I
because
think
they're
guardrails are
somewhat
good.
controversial,
Oh, I know. And
right?
people are just like, let it go. And I'm like, like anything I've kind of been into, it's like we are so good at breaking things as humans. I prefer that we don't break this thing yet, right? Like we're gonna break it over time. We're already breaking it. That's not the point. The point is like, let's not break it to where it causes a negative outflow, right? That could be very detrimental to our existence, right? Like you shouldn't be able to ask it to do certain things that could be, or that were already on the no-no list. Okay, so
Yeah, and not to interrupt, but I'm waiting on the first major like 12-hour blackout in New York City that gets blamed on AI.
oh,
Somehow it gets blamed on AI,
for
right? The New
sure.
York Post is like AI blackens city story at 11.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um
You're right, and we do love to do that. We do love to kind of push blame to something else to maybe not take responsibility for what's happening. But okay, so back to the question, right? Like I use it a lot, but my next layer of GPT, I think what I really rely on is that I got to a place where I realized. So if anybody's in the OpenAI or ChatGPT or even Cloud, what you can find is that sometimes if you start a new conversation, but that conversation was based on previous context, it doesn't carry over from one conversation to the other. So for example,
right, right.
today I'm talking about, we'll use for example, an upcoming thing, which is Dan Golden, aerospace, space travel, any kind of stuff like that, right? I'm talking about that. I'm asking questions, I'm querying, I'm maybe writing content, I'm bouncing ideas. Well, if I start a new conversation, it doesn't know about that other conversation I was having. And if you do that a few times, right, and us marketers, we probably have a lot of conversations. Um, I've maxed out a couple already, right? Where it was just like, you've reached the end. This conversation has reached its max. You have to start a new conversation. Like, dang, I just lost all of that context. And I thought, wow. So if you saw,
You were Charlie Brown.
yeah,
It's the time of year, right? I
yep,
just watched the Charlie Brown Halloween special.
oh yeah,
And he never got any candy when he went trick or treating. Every time he got a rock.
right.
So you were like Charlie Brown. You got a freaking rock. You're like, what the
Fuck.
hell?
Yeah, and it stopped me in my tracks a bit. And I was like, okay, what do I need to do to bring all as much as that context? I can't, obviously I can copy and paste, but then I would just max out the next conversation. So it's like,
Right.
I actually last week published a carousel on LinkedIn that kind of what helped me do that, which was a list about 10 prompts to extract that information into
I
a
saw that.
new conversation. I thought that was, and I had heard about a few ideas. And so this is a combination of a bunch of other ideas from different podcasts of guys that I follow in AI right now. And I said, okay, that's good enough for a new conversation. I was like, but you know what? They have this ChatGPT has this really cool feature called Create GPT, which is like you can create kind of like your own little GPT, and you can,
See, I'm interested in that.
yeah,
That's one reason I think I'm going to start giving them the 20 a month for the plus
yeah.
because yeah, I just kind of want to take it beyond where I am. Like I say, I know that I can do this more intelligently, and I just think I need to put a little effort into it.
Yeah. So on the left top side, if you're on the premium or plus, you can see that it says GBT, and then generally it says like has a little four square little icon that says Explore GPTs. Well, you can go there and you can find other people's GPTs that they've made. Everything from image generators to a consensus one to like Dolly's on there, or a data analyst, or something about plants. All kinds of really creative people have gone in and made some GPTs. And I thought, you know what, I can do this too. So I did, and I have a bunch of them. And so on my website, I'm republishing my website here in the next 10 days. It will have a page of the GPTs I've created, because you
Oh,
can choose
cool.
if you want them public or not. But I have
Right, right.
like ones that I've used as kind of like a crutch to in my clutch. It knows exactly what I need it to do rather than starting a new conversation. For example, I have one that's called Copy Troll. It's essentially just a one you can feed it your copy, and it will provide you with a direct, no nonsense critique on all the forms of copy that you feed it. So it's pretty much trained to just give you
That's neat.
the this doesn't work scenario, or here's what works and here what doesn't work. And because I noticed sometimes, like, I don't want the fluff. Sometimes, conversational AI, this generative AI, it might sometimes kind of be geared to give you what you want to hear, because it's trying to solve your problems. Trying to,
Kiss your ass a little. Yeah,
oh
it
yeah,
does. It seems to kiss my ass a
100%.
little.
Versus
Yeah, I
where
do
it's
feel
like, hey, no, give it to me straight, man. Does this work? And eventually, when
that.
you get to that place, it'll be like, yeah, I don't like that, or that doesn't work. And here's some ideas of maybe how we can like reformat. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Well, if you start new conversations, it doesn't retain that information. So again,
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a
yeah.
big
So
problem.
I created a bunch of prompts you could run through your conversations to extract that information and then put it into a GPT to train it on how to understand,
Cool.
dialogue, what you're trying to
Well,
accomplish.
I'm
So
just I'm
yeah.
just imagining that, let's say you and I are friends who go to lunch every month. Once a month we go to lunch, we get all caught up and everything. And I'm just imagining after a couple years of doing that, if I had no memory of the previous lunches,
Uh-huh.
right? Like
Uh-huh.
that kind of ruins the whole freaking thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, it does. It would be like, were you even listening the whole time? Like,
Yeah,
were you
what's the
even listening to me,
point?
man?
Yeah.
And
So, mhm.
like that when you start a new conversation, you get a little frustrated because you're like, then you all that work. If you're really heavily into AI right now, and your conversational AI, especially, you would do a lot of work giving it good prompt value. Hopefully, you do. Hopefully, you're just not like, hey, write me
Right.
an article. It's like, hey,
Exactly.
write me an article in this tone with this thing and this, in this humor with
For
these
this
clips.
audience,
Give me
yeah.
two stats. Give me, because otherwise you're gonna have to do that every single time. You're gonna have to reiterate. And for me, I have a structure. For example, my LinkedIn articles, I have a structure like of how I want the article
Which
to
I would
flow.
call a template,
Yeah, it's a
right?
template, and
Yeah,
most
you
writers do.
templatize the process. That's what smart content producers do. You got to
Yes,
have a
yes.
template.
Now, is it like fill in the blank? No, but it's a guide on how to
It's a
what I
structure. It's a
well.
guide. Yeah, it's a
Yeah, well,
guide.
in
Yeah.
UI UX, right, in development of these lovely websites and apps that you use, there are what's called UI UX rules, which are foundationally based off of what we've learned about how people interact with those devices, whether it be your website or your app. Now it gets conversationally, argumentatively controversial because I'd say that depending
Right.
on what you're trying to build will dictate how that user is going to interact with that page, right? So shoppers, for example, when you pop up Amazon, what's the first thing you see? A search bar for the item that you're looking to get, right? Because that's what you came there for. You didn't come there to shop through their deals and look at the latest home and garden items. Now that is there, but it's going to change based on who you are. The real result was you went here to shop for stuff. What do you want? And that's how you,
Right.
right?
Right.
Versus another site that may not be so much a product century site or like as a tech blog, right? Well, it depends on tech people might be different than a home and garden blog. So learning those
Oh,
nuances.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so learning the nuances and understanding, like, okay, when I write content, I'm writing for my audience, or depending on where the audience is landing, because hopefully you're not taking one piece and posting it all over all your channels of social, because I think they're different. I think long gone are the days you can just cross post and get away with it. You gotta diversify the message a bit for your Facebook friends, for your Instagram friends, for your TikTok videos, for your LinkedIn crowd.
Right.
And or you only play with one of those arenas or two of those arenas.
Know your audience. Know
Yeah,
your
know your
audience.
audience. So
Yes, I preach it
exactly.
every day. Yep.
Know your audience, or in business, know your customer, KYC, right? So when you do that, you kind of streamline that back. So when you're writing content, hopefully you have like a structure. And I think I have a structure. So you can program that structure into a GPT. And that way when you return to it, you're not starting from scratch again. You
I think there's solid value in that. And in fact, I was recently listening to one of my new favorite podcasts. I've been wanting to give it a plug on our podcast, which I don't do very often, right? There's a podcast called The Artificial Intelligence Show. The guys who host this are actually in Cleveland, Ohio. So they're not some bloviated tech bros from LA or San Francisco. They're Midwestern dudes, right? And they bring kind of a Midwestern perspective to it. But damn, are they like smart about all this, and they have been dealing with many of the topics that we are talking about right now. Again, sorry for the interruption. I knew at some point I needed to introduce these guys to our listeners and say, check out the Artificial Intelligence Show. It's so much information. I literally, if I don't hyper focus on it, I feel like I just need to hand it over to Notebook LM and say, just give me a 12-minute summary,
right,
right?
right.
And that's back to, does AI help us summarize content? I would not say these guys are too verbose because I don't feel like they waste any of my time, right?
Yeah.
If it's an
Yeah.
hour and 20-minute episode, I feel like I get a value equivalent to the time invested. But yeah, what if there's another 10 of those podcasts out there that I want to listen to also?
For sure.
Right? And I don't have 12 hours a week to be listening to these podcasts. So can AI help us with that? Anyway, it just kind of, my whole intent here was actually just to, turn people on to this great AI podcast. But, is it, after thinking about it a little more, is it an example of content that you can hand over to an AI during your busy weeks?
Mhm.
Hey, during those weeks where I have time to listen to the entire episode, I'm down. I love it. I'm there and I'm going to listen to every freaking minute. But there are times when life gets in the way. So during those times, normally we would just not absorb the content, right? we,
Yeah.
we wouldn't, it wouldn't get to us, it would not get into our brains. And so if I'm like, damn, I want to listen to this entire episode, it's beautiful, these guys are super smart, but I don't have an hour and a half, I have 12 minutes. So you know again, do I hand it to an AI and say, give me a summarization regardless of the form of that summarization,
Mm.
and go that route? Maybe I do. So just options, options, options.
Well, what's going to be great about that, or maybe this is on my future wish list, but I think that there's content which I will be engaged and listen to very devoutly, just very like just I'm in this and I'm plugged, right? There's certain people.
Because you get enough value out of it
Oh
that it makes sense. It's a
yeah.
smart move.
What I've found is I two times it, right? I listen to like a lot of podcasts on two. I was
See, that's smart. I haven't
yeah,
started doing that yet, but I
yeah,
remember you and I talking about that a few months ago.
yep,
And I was like, I got to start doing that because it's these little efficiencies
mhm,
that if you can just embrace these little efficiencies, you become a little more productive, a little more efficient than your competition. And, I didn't invent the universe, but it's a very competitive world.
yeah.
So if you can just get 4% more efficient than your competition, guess what? Right? You're going to win.
Well, 100%. And then also, what I think would be great, first of all, use all the features when you listen to podcasts or anything. For example, it has on Audible, it has like a bookmark thing that you can click, and then you can like write a quick note. So a lot of times when I'm listening to audiobooks
Oh, that's
on
cool. That's
on
cool.
two times,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I want to remember that for later, so I have to
Right.
mark it, write a little note, and keep going. Versus, let me rewind that, listen to it in one time, like and
Right.
absorb. Like, no, I got to keep going, but I want to get back to that. So that's a good feature for that, right? What
That's cool. Yeah.
my wish list item though was that AI plugs in and watches and listens to everything I do and how I speed things up for system that I actually will listen to on real time, yada yada yada, and then later on gives me that kind of like recommendation front loaded. You have an hour to crush at the gym. I've already lined up. Here's a 1 hour podcast that I lined up for 30 minutes because you're going to listen to it at two times, and then this
There
guy
you go.
15-minute one. I want you to listen to it all the way through, and then for the last 15 minutes, because this is what I normally do, I'm going to switch you to this pow pow EDM music that you're gonna just punch out the rest of your workout. That's my ideal, like, AI, like scenario, right? Like it did it for me because it learned
Because
how
it
I
understands what you want and what
yeah,
you need, right?
yeah.
Like your lifestyle, your
Well,
your
optimization.
workflow.
It's gonna cut the corners of me having to go then search for that track, change to the next book, change to the next podcast, blah 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 blah. Right? Like it's gonna go. Okay, I got you now. You don't have to worry about it. So I even if I'm saving macro seconds, I don't miss my stride in a workout. Right? Like every
Right,
second
right.
counting at that point. And so
Because I do not want to adjust rabbit ears. I am
no,
so tired
done.
of that.
We got rid
Not
of
doing it.
that. We got rid of the remote control. We can tell the smart things listening in our house what to do for certain things. The next level is the recommendation. Like in the morning, it's going to be here's your day, and here's also the things that I've put in front of those weird downtime things or those cross productive times that you have going on. I've already got you loaded. Have a great day. Cool.
Well, and we don't heavily script this podcast because it's
No.
just kind of like our opportunity to download what's gone on in the last week, right? And in the world of AI and tech and biz tech, it's a lot.
there's still more advanced modeling and agents out there that you can tap into that are of a higher cost. I think this is for the everyday person. So if you wanted the ability to have like a mini chatbot that's customized to your needs, I think you're missing out if you don't sign up for the $20 and use the plus and start creating your own
You've
GPT.
convinced me.
Yeah, and if you want to DM me
You've
or
convinced me.
you,
Yeah.
I can totally work with you, on the side. But if other people are interested, they want to DM me, I can walk them through it. Doesn't take that long to kind of get it, and then you'll be off. You'll be hitting running. And I think it's. I've learned some nuances when you go through the training process, but I encourage you even just try it. And if you get into those roadblocks, reach out, or for you, Curt, just give me a text and we'll go.
Well,
Um,
now
yeah.
earlier you mentioned Ideogram,
Oh yeah. So Ideogram,
so
right?
I'm eager to hear from how you're leveraging that tool.
First of all, I love Audiogram for two reasons. One, I generally get exactly what I want out of what I'm trying to create, and I have a history, so I probably have a little bit of an advantage over most people if they just joined Ideogram, which is that I used Midjourney, I use Dali, I've used a lot of these platforms, and it doesn't not hurt me that I'm also a photographer. I also know how to do digital design, Photoshop, everything. So I know all of like the ways to tweak a design, not just hey, make me a pretty picture of a chessboard,
Right, that's
right?
just one tool in the toolbox, but there
Yeah.
are other tools. Let's be
So
honest.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh, there is. There's focal lengths. There's rendering. There's render engines out there, right? Like Surreal or Octane, right? That did a lot of the very high hyperrealistic graphic work. You can ask it to make things in that rendering engine. You can ask it to make it like an artist style, whether it be Banksy or Leonardo da Vinci. You can do so many things to one image to make
Oh, I
it look
can
like.
hear the lawsuits coming now. But anyway, it keeps it exciting, right?
Oh yeah,
It keeps it exciting.
the art community hates this, by the
Yeah, I'm glad
way.
there's all this copyright stuff because we got to get it sorted out somehow. So
Well,
might as well start now.
there is nothing that says that you did the same cubism type of work and it looked like that guy's work. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a style of art. Art is always reimaginating, always creative. Yes, there's founding fathers of those art styles. However, borrowing from their style to incorporate into your artwork isn't any different to where if you had a pen or pencil marker or a paintbrush in your hand versus this digital pen, paper, marker.
Reinterpretation.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
and nothing beats a high output DSLR or mirrorless camera like a Leica when it comes to photography. You can't scale these images and stretch it onto a canvas. These are not easy. You'd have to be very much into some higher echelons of AI production because they're pretty much capped at image sizes as well. So there's some rules
Right.
here. But all right, so Ideogram. The thing was, I finally hit my max. I was on the $20 program. It was the base. Oh, plus was the base. Yeah, so plus you get like 1,000 priority credits.
Yeah, I'm on the $8 program.
Okay, okay.
That's
So yeah, eight
which
dollars.
I which
Yeah,
I thought would last me 2 weeks, and they would be like, "You're out of credits.
yeah.
You need to give us more money." And I was fully prepared to do that, and it didn't happen.
Yeah. So I was
So
on
I just
20 for
keep
a
doing
while.
the $8.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
on 20 for a while, and I finally hit the max where it slowed me down. So all of my turns, my generations were taking about a minute and a half to 2 minutes, and
yeah, yeah.
that's not working when I'm like revising, 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 revising. So sometimes I get an image and I don't really like the first image. So obviously I need to do it again, or I need to change it, or I need to rerun it, or blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of little tools you can use. Also, that you don't have the private feature. So I have a whole library of images on Plus that are private, that are, so that people can't, not so that people can't, more or less because I'm using it for my own content on my business stuff or and things. And I just don't want that reused somewhere else without it
Right.
being stolen from my page rather than somebody using the general
Well,
back.
yeah, and that's smart business because you don't want your competition to be directly taking your stuff because that
Yeah.
is a potential outcome, right? So,
Yeah. And you get
yeah.
unlimited slow credits and that was fine. But I think what it was is like I'm now cranking out a lot of content on different. I have new things that I've decided to launch. I'm now pushing forward in Twitter space and making some relevancy here. And so I have to diversify what I offer and Instagram and other places. So I was like, so I just cranked it up and I hit that wall. And so, yeah, I think that just hurt a little bit from 20 to 60, but it didn't in the fact that it now I'm not slowed down at all. So that was all it, right? It's just like I'm finding that I guess that there is a tiered program for a reason. If you're at $8 in your basic, this is
Yep.
priority credits. 400 is up to 1,600 images a month because it always is in generations of four, unless you use their upscale feature. And so you can think of like for every image, it produces four images, and
Exactly.
that would be one priority credit. Or sometimes you'll see ones that are like maybe two or three, depending on like the time of day. So I think it's also throttled based on prime time hours where other people where their server load is probably really high. That's my guess. I haven't dug into the inner workings of that to that level because honestly, I don't have a problem with it. No, generally, just so you know, platform builders out there, unless I run into a block, I don't really generally go into the nerd out science of like what is stopping me from doing that.
Right.
Um, but I think that with $8 package, you get a lot of really good stuff. You still get a lot of the you can download the original quality PNGs, which is really good. You get the ability to upscale. You can search all through the community images, which is great for getting inspirational quote prompts.
Right.
I think that's good. I think, like I said, well, I was in plus because I was already at the 1,000 credits a month scenario. Because I also make images for fun too, like just really cool artwork and different stuff I send to my friends. And
Right. Right.
it's not just the business stuff. And and the ability to upload an image and manipulate it, which is a cool, quick feature. I still like Adobe Suite more for that. I use Photoshop, but that's because you can get into the artistic values of how you want to regenerate an image. Um, but it's cool to upload on Plus. You can upload an image and you can like tell it to.
Yeah, that's a neat capability, and I have some colleagues on LinkedIn who use Adobe Firefly,
Yep.
and like I haven't tried it yet, and I
Mhm.
need to. I need to sign up for a month or two. But they turned me on to Adobe Firefly, and I turned them on to Ideogram, and they've actually used Ideogram uh, to create images for their blog or their podcast or their technical documentation or whatever,
Mhm.
right? But yeah, so I think the takeaway for listeners is that there's several AI image generators out there that are very powerful and can really help you improve your game, because you can give me the most perfect 15,000 words I've ever seen, but if it's just a bunch of text, it doesn't really. It's not a finished product. It's not ready to go.
Yeah, you gotta have some breakpoints in there. You gotta,
Oh heck yeah!
yeah. So yeah.
Especially on mobile,
Uh-huh.
right? Like I don't know if but you develop articles, I develop articles, so I do it like I have these two 28-inch 4K monitors on my desk, right? And so I
Yep.
have all this massive real estate. But then I realize I look at the statistics, the majority of the people who consume my content do so on a smartphone,
Mm.
on a very small screen compared to these two massive screens that I have on my desk.
Yeah.
And they probably also have those two massive screens, but the data shows us that most of the time they're out, picking up their kids from band practice, and they're consuming your content on a smartphone. And so I include even more images in my articles now
Hmm.
because I'm increasingly experiencing my own content on a smartphone and saying, "Oh wow, that was too much text. There needs to be an image to break that up." Which makes me rely even more on something like Adobe Firefly or Dolly or Midjourney or Ideogram, right? Because it's just such an efficient. And to your point, if you get down to prompt engineering, right? If you
Yep.
get down to manipulating the prompt, don't assume. It's something I've been trying to teach my readers through my articles is do not assume that the very first prompt that you give the AI is going to give you what you want. That's kind of daft in a way.
Very,
Like
very.
chances are you're not going to get what you want. What you're going to get is, oh, I see. That's how I interpreted that. Okay, I need to do this to change it up.
Yeah, and a good hack that I will share with people is use your generative AI to create the prompt relative to if you're writing copy. So, for example, if I'm writing an article, I'm going back and forth with the idea or concept. I usually then will take that context and have tell it, which is another prompt to engineer, which is hey, I want you to take, the most impactful part of this copy or this article, turn
Right.
AI image generator prompt. Got to say that, otherwise it'll try to make you a dolly image, and and with whatever you want, right? Like tone and all that stuff. Because again, if you are into the engineering part of it, getting those nuanced aesthetics in there that could make the image just stand out versus other images like stock AI images or things
Right.
like that, is kind of like a game changer. It adds your own little personal flair on it. So, and if you don't have artistic value and you don't know about these things, I'd say it wouldn't hurt to maybe reach out to somebody like me or other artists or creators and say, hey, either do you have a list of prompts maybe that I could source from, or I don't know, offer them $5 for their time, something that just says like, teach me how to do this, because don't get stuck.
Right.
Don't stand there and go like, well, I can't do it. So then, like, no, we want to see that little bit of extra imaginative, and I know that not everybody has that language or that background set. So it's like,
Right.
tap into your resources. I think that what I've learned, at least in the AI and tech community, in most cases, that everybody's pretty friendly and willing to help everybody share. I think we have a different understanding of innovation. I mean, outside of proprietary stuff, of course you want to protect your ideas, but when it comes to like something where you're kind of like, anybody can do this, if you can say anybody can do this in the back of your head to something, I really feel like it's like, then don't stage gate that. Don't make that a premium thing, or
Right.
so just give that away. Like, they're not going to do it the same. They're not going to do it exactly robotic for you. And if they do, then they're going to be limited in their results anyways, and that doesn't hurt you. That just changes. That just helps them do what they got to do. I come from a diverse background, and maybe sometimes I'm going to speak a little bit more loose lipped and say things like ain't,
Hmm.
and I don't want it to correct me. Maybe I incorporated ain't for a reason, and so you got to look at it
Ain't
that
that's as American as apple pie and the Henry Ford Model T.
way.
So if you want to, yeah, if you don't embrace ain't, why are you even in America?
I tell a funny story about how, like, for a long time I had to program like my iPhone, because it in the beginning it was very stringent on like that autocorrect. How to, when I address most people with y'all, like, or y'all, like, hey, when are y'all going to the
Yeah.
to the bar later? When I was drinking, or when can I meet up with y'all? Or I hope y'all are doing great, because I was in Texas. I lived in Texas for a while, but I remember like it just kept wanting to change it constantly, y'all or you all, and I'm like, no, it's y'all. Like,
Yo Brenner. Did
like,
you
can I
mean
go?
Yo Brenner?
Let
Is
me
that
go into
what you were
settings and
talking about?
program some new words here that I'm going to use, ebonics and such. If you're in a business and you're looking over agreements, or you're writing a really good email or a pitch or a proposal, or I highly suggest Grammarly, because it's going to catch all those things before you hit send. The last thing
Right,
you want,
right. No,
is that
that's a
email coming
yeah,
back.
that's a great rundown because I've been curious as to what your kind of daily go-tos were when it came to AI tools, and so that's a nice little wrap up. Well, we are over the top of the hour, so I think we should wrap up the regular episode and then keep going. I would like to talk about a few other things like Dan Golden from NASA. So we'll talk about those in a bonus episode this week, and we'll go ahead and wrap up out of consideration to our professional business listeners who when you bump up on an hour, you're kind of getting to the limit there, right? We're going to go ahead and wrap it up, but I want to thank you for stopping by, John. I appreciate you kind of laying out. It's been a while since I've wanted to hear how you're using AI and the exact tools that you're doing it with, and so I think that was really cool. Mr. John Bailey from the Mindset Genesis in Las Vegas, thank you for coming by this week. Hopefully, our listeners learned a little more about AI and its role in our jobs. And I know everybody's afraid that your job's going to go away and the red eyed robots are going to take over. But it's a little more nuanced and complex than that. And that's what we try to break down every week. So if you want to understand that better, come by and hit that subscribe button. God, did I finally say that?
You did.
I feel cheesy. Yeah, I feel kind of cheesy. I gotta admit. I think I need a shot of whiskey.
Uh,
Hit that subscribe button. Yeah, but no, seriously, tune in every week, and we will do our best to not waste your time and to put good information into your head. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll make your brain bigger. There you go.
Definitely.
There
See
you
you
go.
guys next week.
All
So,
right. Thanks, John. I'll talk to you next week.
all right, thanks, Kurt. Thank you, everybody.